Hey, it's Seriously Sis podcast, and this week we're going to be talking about worship being a weapon.
Yeah, and utilizing that weapon. I feel like sometimes we know it's a weapon, but we don't use it.
I agree. Sometimes, we get so in our feelings or we get so moved to do something we forget.
Yeah, and you know
Take
what?
a moment.
I want to start by asking a question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that sometimes when we are going through something, worship can be, I guess it varies person to person, but can be the thing that we turn to last?
I think that sometimes we try to do things in our own strength. And I do think the majority of people are fixers. Now, I know that people will say that's not true, but the majority of people I ever have met, when something bad happens, their immediate reaction is try to fix it. Or their immediate reaction is to get down and depressed and woe is me. I don't have any authority or power over anything. I'm just going to go and sit in my bed and cry and waste away.
Waste away. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh at that. I wasn't expecting you to say that. I agree with you. I also think that part of it is because we don't understand the power that's in worship. Like you said, a lot of people are fixers, and even if you're not a fixer, you're all of us are self preservers.
Listen, I can say for fact that people do not know the power that is in worship.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I can tell you from being a worship leader that people just don't get it sometimes. Yeah, I can definitely say that.
Yeah, but I feel like Scripture gives us countless examples of why we should enter into those situations in worship. And I don't I want to make sure that I'm painting this the right way. I'm not saying that you worship to get something, right? Like that's not what I'm saying.
No, yeah.
But your worship does have a lot of power, and over again in Scripture, from Old Testament to New Testament, we see that power on display when people worship. And to clarify, when we're saying worshiping, we're talking about praise and worship. Like we're talking about song. We're talking about singing. Yes, prayer as well. But singing, sitting in God's presence and ministering to Him,
right?
As He ministers to us. I just want to clarify what we're talking about with worship, because that can go a variety of ways. Now, I know that you have been scouring the Bible for some examples of those stories where people entered into difficult situations in worship. So what you got?
Man, there are so many, like you said. And I was like, we were just, full disclaimer, just talking back and forth, like, which one of these do we want to talk through? Because there are hundreds, right? And we did talk about, like, the most common one that comes to mind, of course, is the walls of Jericho.
Right.
For worship. And most people know that story. And, on the seventh day, how they worship and they tooted their horns.
Tooted the horns.
What those look like.
I'm sorry, tooted the horn. It makes it seem. Tooted the horn. I'm envisioning. But I'm envisioning this grand band, and then she said toot toot, and then the wall came down.
When I think of the story of the walls, is just full disclaimer. When I think of it, I think of VeggieTales because I've watched that since I was a kid. So I just imagine, Larry the cucumber and Bob the tomato, and the little asparagus guy, Junior. That's his name.
Junior.
Going around these walls, man. I don't know what they look like, but I just assume they look just like they were in that.
Well, as someone who has never watched VeggieTales, didn't come up with that. It just reinforces that whole toot toot that is in my mind. It really was like a
toot toot. But the point is, in that situation, I could see where we might look like we lost our whole minds.
Yeah.
Right? That we're going to walk around these walls and they're going to be destroyed by walking. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a very big person. And when I walk around things, they don't tend to shake nor move. So you just, you know what I mean? It just seems unlogical. And that's the crazy thing. Like when you get into worship and you follow through with that, unlogical things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you're right. Like, when's the last time that you took a trip around the wall and sang around it, and it came crumbling down.
So there is a song that VeggieTales also
Oh,
sings.
Lord. More VeggieTales.
I'm not going to sing it. But the lyrics say, keep walking, but you won't knock down our wall. Keep walking, but it isn't going to fall. It's plain to see that your brains are very small to think walking would be knocking down our wall. And I just think that makes sense to me.
I mean, yeah, it does. But I think that that's exactly why people don't go to worship first, because what is that going to do from a logical standpoint to
Right.
change my situation?
And if it doesn't happen, then what do we look like? I think a lot of times we don't do it because we don't want to look foolish.
Right.
When
Yeah.
maybe it didn't pan out the way that you said it was going to pan out.
But my question would be, how do you know if you never try? Like, I can think of, in my own life when I chose to surrender my inclination to fix or my inclination to do and just sit at the feet of Jesus and worship and sing. And even if the only thing that happened, quote unquote, in that moment was that it shifted my point of view to God, I was still in a better place when I left than when I got there. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in the power of God. So I believe that our worship changes situations. I believe that God
Right.
responds to our voices. But sometimes even just getting into his presence and allowing your mind and spirit to remember that the God that I serve is exponentially bigger than this thing that I'm facing, that in and of itself can give you the push that you need to keep going. And I
Right.
think, sometimes we want to look for those walls of Jericho moments, but sometimes you need to sit with your dad and you need to let him, just be with you and hold you
Right.
and console you in that moment to get through it. So whether it is a wall of Jericho moment or it is just a rest, because the word says that the Lord gives rest to the one that he loves, all of that is found in our worship. And we do ourselves a disservice, I feel, when we either don't think about going there first or we talk ourselves out of it.
Right. And I will say, and we were kind of talking about this before we started this, and I'm very much a go to worship first kind of person when things aren't going my way or the way I feel they should be going, or catastrophe has struck yet again. I'm a worshiper. I'm going to worship. But you know what? I'm going to worship on the car on my way to work. Like when I feel like I need a shift in my demeanor, I'm going to worship. So that's always my go-to. But I think that for me was my go-to when I was a kid.
Gotcha.
Like I didn't have the best home life growing up, and I always went to worship. Even when I was like, God, this don't make any sense, like upset, I would go to worship until it shifted my perspective.
Right.
And that's often what it does, is it does really shift the demeanor and the perspective. And so I think that, for some people, maybe that's the last thing they go to. But I do think there are people that is the first thing they go to. And I can say from being one of those people, a lot of people say I'm very patient. I was like, Madison, like you're very patient, like within work and whatnot. And I think that I get that patience because how much I lean on worship.
Gotcha.
I think it gives me that demeanor, and it gives me a level of patience that most probably wouldn't have.
Well, I'm going to strive to be like you when I grow up. I'm not going to say that worship is the last thing that I think to do, because it's not. I think my initial reaction is prayer. Me and God talk all day long. So that's always my first reaction. And I think because I'm in the habit of just talking to God in general, that's where I go to first. But to sit in his presence and to sing or to play or, whatever, it's not always my first thought, because I am a fixer. I will think myself into a tizzy how to get out of something. And I have to remind myself sometimes to just sit and be in his presence. His word says that he is enthroned on our praises. We make him king in
Right.
our lives. He's always king, but in our lives, we make him Lord when we sit and we sing to him in the midst of what we're going through and allow him to have authority and dominion, even in that season, even to pause us. And so I think we miss out on that. But for me, I don't always think to do that. Now, to be completely honest, because I am a music lover in general, what I tend to do is go to music to soothe the emotion in me, but it's not always worship, right? I have to remind myself sometimes that even though that's okay, like it's okay to go for a walk, it's okay to go to the gym, it's okay to do the thing that you need to do to get through the moment. But sometimes I have to remind myself to take that time and sit in God's presence. And I think there's scripture for that too. Like, I believe it's in Proverbs or Psalms or one of those. I'll put it in post when I find it. But it says, "Why are you so downcast, my soul?" And then it says, it speaks to your soul and it says, "No, get up and worship the Lord." And for those whose first inclination is not to worship, sometimes you have to speak to your soul and put it into submission.
Right.
And tell it, no, this is what we're going to do. And for me, sometimes that's what I have to do is I've got to take authority over me. Like I've got to take authority over my emotions and remind myself to do that. So I love that is the first thought for you. I would say it's probably the third thought for me sometimes, depending upon what the situation is. I'm working on getting better at it. But yeah, you definitely won't see the fruit and the freedom and things that you will see if you don't ever tap into that worship.
I agree. I do agree. I think when I'm thinking about ways like I got to the point where worship was the first thing that I went to, I'm a musical person. Like music has always been my go-to, even growing up, like when you're upset or sad, I'm going to listen to music. You catch me over in the corner with my headphones on in youth group, right? Worship or music, not worship, music was my go-to. And I ended up cutting all music out of my vocabulary or listening or whatever that is not Christian and worship.
Right.
And for me, I had to do that because my music taste went from one extreme to another. You know anything about me? It went from all the way over here to all the way over here, right? But I had to take that away, I guess, out of my life. And all I listen to Christian music, I listen to worship music. So if I want to turn on music to listen to, it's worship music. Like if I want to dance around the house, never do that. It's worship music, right? Like even my kids last night, or not last night, Wednesday night, we were headed home from church and they were asking me to play some song I've never heard of. And I was like, I'm going to play your favorite song. And I put on Praise. And of course, Malachi loves that song. So as soon as I put it on, he's singing completely off pitch. But like I'm trying to teach them.
Sure.
Like that this is what we listen to. We don't listen to any of that other stuff. If we're gonna listen to music, we're gonna do this kind of music.
Yeah.
And I think for me that was super helpful because I'm a musical person, so I go to music regardless, but I make sure it's worship music.
Right. That's good. And I think we could have a whole podcast on whether Christians should be listening to secular music or not.
Do according to your convictions.
Oh, okay. See, when I said it about Santa Claus, it was a problem. But no, I know a lot of people who hold that sentiment that you hold about only listening to Christian music. And I think that is beautiful. That is not where I have arrived, but I think that is beautiful. Now, what I will say is that I don't listen to music that causes me to have to do something contrary to what I say I believe, or that would make me align with something that is contrary to what I believe. So, when I just want to clarify, when I say I'm going to music sometimes to listen to music, I might be going to something that's not Christian focused,
right.
But it's speaking to whatever the situation is that I'm walking through, not necessarily from a Christian perspective, but just allowing me to sit in the moment. And sometimes I think Christians don't give themselves time to like deal with the thing that they're dealing with. And sometimes for me, that's me taking a moment and being like, okay, this is what I feel like right now and it sucks. And I'm going to acknowledge the fact that it sucks, but we're not going to stay here, right? Like we're not going to stay here. And then when I'm moving out of that staying there, then I go to the worship music. And maybe that's also not the right approach, but you know, just being a music lover, like you said, that's, you know, and just being honest, that's where I tend to go. But even with that being said, the Lord taps me on my shoulder and it's like, when we gonna get back to me? When we gonna come back and put the focus back on me? And when you gonna remember that I'm good and all these things and give me the praise that I'm due? When we gonna do that? And without fail, anytime I do that, it always,
Right.
like if even if the situation doesn't change, it always lifts my spirit every time. So I know we were talking about some scriptures that kind of reinforce this idea, drive it home. And I think they drive it home in a tangible way. You know, we've talked a lot about how things make us feel or our perspective or things like that. And worship is great for that. But let's talk about some tangible like outcomes of what happens when you start worshiping.
Are you talking about more stories?
Yes.
Like Paul and Silas?
Yes.
So, I mean, Paul and Silas, you know, they're in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And what did they do? They started worshiping.
Mm-hmm.
And the ground began to quake. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, it did say, like, there was an earthquake in the prison doors, and they were freed from worship.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think it gets any more tangible than that. You know?
Right.
You're literally captive.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally captive, and their worship set them free. Now, we can take this from a physical standpoint, but you could also take this from a mental standpoint.
Right.
Because you could be physically captive to whatever is tormenting you.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one we're going to get to. And worship set you free.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, music is so powerful.
Right.
It's such a tool. I mean, think about what the devil used to do.
Right. Exactly.
So it's so powerful. And I know Michael talks about that a lot, about how, you know, worship is one of those things that you can use it as a weapon. Mm-hmm. You also can manipulate worship into making it about you. Mm-hmm. Or not focusing on God during worship, just kind of going through the motions. I do think there's some power being in the room when other people are worshiping. Mm-hmm. I do think so, but I do think that we need to worship ourselves.
Yeah, I think I think the Holy Spirit can be in the room and you can miss him. Like he can definitely be in the room and everybody else knows that he's in the room.
I've physically seen that happen.
But you missed it. You know, like it's definitely possible. I think scripturally for me, where I go to whenever I think about worship as a weapon is the story of King Jehoshaphat. And he was getting ready to march into battle, literal battle, against enemies. And he sent the musicians and the singers, he put them in the front of the army.
Why do you think that, like, you know, we read scripture and there's so many instances, like, right, probably hundreds. Why do you think that in that day and age that it was so apparent of how important worship is? And that in today's society and where we are, sometimes we're completely unaware.
That's a good question. I wish you would have asked me that question off camera, because then I could have processed it.
But that's the point.
my initial thought is that in those instances in the New Testament, they had no other option. When you're literally in battle facing an enemy with swords and spears and, you know, all the things, you don't have another option. I think in Paul and Silas's situation, they were in prison. They didn't have another option. I think a lot of times, at least in the Western part of the world, I think there's always another option, you know, like even to my own conviction, I can go to other music. I can go to people. I can sit and sulk in my whatever. I can try to fix it in my own strength. And I think we have all of these other counterfeit options that we don't choose that. But those people were desperate. Like if you read that same story about King Jehoshaphat, he went before the Lord and was crying out to him, like, are you gonna be with us in this? We can't do this without you. And I think sometimes we don't have that same level of desperation. That's my initial thought. Again, I wish you would have asked me off camera, because then I could have thought about it a little deeper, but that's my initial thought. What do you think?
I think that like some of the instances like we just talked about are like to your point, they're like kind of catastrophic. There's something crazy that's happened and now we're leaning on the Lord. I think we do that a lot. I think we lean on the Lord when things are tough. Mm-hmm. But I do think nowadays we just have so many distractions. And we do have so many fixers that normally we do take it upon ourselves, but there's a lot of things that we can fix ourselves, right? Should we? No. And is it easier that way? No, it's not. But do we get it done and it work? I think it does. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes that we miss the mark. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we forget to lean on God first, because we've done it ourselves and we got the job done.
Or at least we think we did.
Yeah. Well, we got it done to the best of our abilities, and we think that's the best it can be.
Which is my point. Like, we see something that we did and we think, okay, I got that done, it's taken care of, but you have no idea how God would have worked in that situation. You have no idea what the outcome would have been if you would have let God handle it. Sure, you might have moved past the moment, but maybe God wanted to do something 10 times bigger than what you accomplished, right. You know? I do think that's a good point, and I think that is a deception that we put ourselves in, to think that we could solve a situation better than God.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think everything moves so fast, and I don't think that we think we can solve it better than God. I don't think that's what it is. I think that everything moves so fast that we are so enthralled in our lives that it's just second nature. We just keep going. Mm-hmm. Just keep going. I got to get to the next thing. I got to keep moving. Mm-hmm. I got to keep going. Just keep swimming. Isn't that what Dory says or something? Yeah. But we are so distracted by so many things going on in our lives. Everybody, and we were talking about this at my work the other day, people are going through things. Right. And I know people have always gone through things, but it does feel like nowadays people are going through more things than they've ever gone through. Mm-hmm. I think people aren't handling things well. And I think a lot of that is the fact that we have gotten to the point that everything's on us. Mm-hmm. And we got to get it done. We got to figure it out. There's just all this pressure. And just worship's not at the top of the mind. Yeah. Prayer's not even at the top of the mind. You know, I think some people go to prayer before worship because sometimes it's quick. Lord, fix it. Mm-hmm. Genie in the bottle, let's go. Like something like that. But I do think that the world is hurting and there's a lot of confusion going on. And I really feel bad for like the generations that are coming up. Because if I'm being honest, there's not a lot of worship warriors standing out there, mm-hmm. Yeah, teaching the next generation how to be worshipers. Right. It's so important, Mike, teaching our youth how to worship. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
You said something that made me think, like that's one of the benefits of worshiping. We get in go mode and we're just trying to do things and then we work it out to the best of our ability. That's one of the benefits of stopping to worship, because you stop and you turn your brain off, or the parts of your brain that need to rest anyway, and you turn your spirit on. Mm-hmm. And you get connected with the Lord, and then the Lord starts speaking to you. Or even if he's just giving you rest in a moment, sometimes rest gives you clarity. Like when you aren't knee deep in it in the moment, you take a pause, you're able to look at a situation in a different way than you might not have because you were so anxious and striving, right, and all the things. So that's another benefit of stopping to worship. Worship is for the Lord. It is, but we benefit when we worship because we stop, because we give room for him to speak, because we give our nervous systems a chance to relax. All of the things that do help with our clarity and do help with hearing the Lord clearer. And so it's just another reason to stop, even if he doesn't move in some magnificent earth-shaking way, there's still something to glean from being in his presence, right, and being with your dad. Sometimes we don't think about it like that too. I'm spending time with my dad.
Yeah, and so when you were saying that, it was making me think of, worship is about Him.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that a lot, where it's like it's all for you, Lord. But there's so much of worship that gives something to us as well. So it is about Him,
Mm-hmm.
and it is for Him,
Mm-hmm.
and we're giving it to Him, and by giving it to Him, He's giving something to us.
Yeah, He blesses
that
us.
we need.
Mm-hmm.
And man, worship is just an incredible thing. And I know, like, we talked about some things in the Bible, but I will say, like, for my own life, there's been times that I've been in situations and I've worshiped little bitty situations,
Mm-hmm.
huge situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I have a business that I run, and there's been times when I feel like other people who do the same thing as me aren't finding success, which immediately makes me think that I'm not going to find success. Like, if everyone's struggling, I'm going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I get in worship and I say, you know what, Lord, I'm placing this in your hands. And I've heard from multiple people, like, how I find he brings me through, and it turns out better than I could have done by myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example of worship. Like, I'm giving this to you, and I'm gonna agree and worship through it.
Mm-hmm.
Your will be done. Like, I'm gonna worship through it.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of success with it.
Yeah, 100%. I know for, me, part of my testimony is just coming out of suicidal ideation and anxiety and stuff like that. And early on in that process, I would have to do like the word says, and take every thought captive and make it subject to the word of God. And a lot of times, I remember one time in particular, I was in the car with some of my friends, and that was starting to rear itself, and I literally had to get out the car and start praying and singing over myself. And I did that consistently, and it broke something to the point where I don't deal with that anymore. I don't deal with it the way that I used to. And that was the shifting of the perspective from myself and from what I was dealing with onto God and what He was saying. But it did come through my worship. And there was one other just short story. Someone had spoken over me and a group of people one time that there was going to be healing, that there was healing in our voices, our singing voices. And when they said that, they made a point to clarify, I don't mean just emotional healing. I mean, there's actual healing. The Lord is going to use your voices to heal. And it wasn't long after that someone was in church with us, and they brought someone for the first time, and we were asked to sing. And so we sang, a couple songs, and that this person left with their person that they brought, but they came back and they were like, I just want to let you know that that I'm trying to be discreet, but like, my family member was dealing with this particular ailment and they don't get any relief. But that day after y'all sang, they had the most relief and comfort that they've had in a long time, physically in the disease that they were dealing with at that time. And so those are just different things that I can recall from my walk with the Lord, that it's just like, when we lifted up our voices in worship, we saw physical things happen, not just emotion, not just, making it through to the next day, but like seeing God's hand move in ways we never could have done, never could have done on our own. So yeah, it's definitely actual tangible power in our worship. Yeah,
I agree. Especially from being worship leaders and being on stage on Sundays. I've seen it on a Sunday service. And I think sometimes we can assume like everyone's worship looks the same, just so just because you don't worship the way I worship, which involves a lot of yelling, doesn't mean, I think God, He's looking for all the types and all the different ones. Sure. But yeah, worship is if you don't think it's a weapon, it definitely is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, then,
forever.
In the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. It's just we invite God into impossible situations through our worship, and it gives Him an opportunity to move. God don't need our permission to move, but when we humble ourselves and create that space for him to have his way, and we stop trying to micromanage it, and he can really get in there and move the way that he wants to move. So yeah, for sure. Whatever you're going through, whether it's good or bad, going through something doesn't always have to be bad. You say that,
Right.
and it's got a negative connotation, but it doesn't have to always be bad. Whatever it is, you should be worshiping God in all seasons.
What are some of your go-to worship songs in this season that you go to when, you feel like?
That is a good question. I think it depends on the circumstance. I'm a big like soaking worship kind of girl.
Oh, I know.
So sometimes when I just need to spend time with the Lord, I will just listen to instrumental worship. And so there's no words. Sometimes I will sing and make my own melodies or things like that. But sometimes I just sit in that environment with him. When I'm going through something and I need to remember that God is enough, sometimes I'll put on Jireh because it's literally the chorus.
Not really, yeah.
Whenever it just depends. Like when I'm trying to reframe my thoughts. Lately, we've been on, as a church, we've been on Center. So I've been on that. When I need to be reminded of his power, I'm on Elohim. So it just depends. What about you?
I'm right. I think I listen to a lot of like powerhouse songs. I always make the joke that when I sing, I have a very loud voice, and I think that's because the Lord knew I was going to need to yell about some things in life. So here I am. But Elohim's definitely one that I think that I'm. Man, I can't even say enough about it. But Nothing Else is another one that I find myself going back to a lot. I noticed that a lot of the worship songs I sing to, it's me declaring to the Lord, I don't need anything else. I don't want anything else, just you. And Center again it's a really good one. Asking him to make it where your life always points back to him. When people look at your life and look at where it is, it's pointing back to the Lord.
Yeah.
So those are probably my top 3 right now.
I'd have to add to that, Make Room. I like to.
Oh, we know you love that song.
I love that song. I have to add that to it because I try to keep myself in a consistent place of allowing God to be able to move. And sometimes I have to remind myself to get myself out the way.
Right.
And so that song in particular grounds me so that I do that. So those kinds of songs, like I said, I'm usually a soaking worship kind of girl.
I'm like a jump up and down.
Yes,
Firm Foundation's another one,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like saying I can put my faith in Jesus. I'm like every time,
Now,
like,
if we're stomping on hell, like if that's the vibe, then
always.
it's gonna be like What a God, or it's gonna be something like that.
I forgot about What a God.
If that's what we're doing, then or what's the other one that they have that I really like? It's like the same people, right? It's
it's Red Worship. It's
I can't think of what it's. Yeah. It's such a declaration kind of song. Like we're
it's gonna stress me out because I can't think of what it's called right now.
I know. I can like hear the little hum chant that you just hummed, but yeah, I can't think of but that song, definitely. Never Bow.
Never Bow. There it is.
That's the song. That's the song. Yeah. So it just depends on the vibe. What are we doing?
That one's one of those like play with me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You should have chose to pray with me.
I know that a lot of the times, like when we're getting on the stage, we used to have someone on the team, and his declaration was, "Let's go to war." Every time we go and get up on that stage and really, I'm like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we are, which is why worship is important.
It is.
You have to remember we're fighting spiritual battles. We have to fight them with spiritual tools, spiritual weapons, and worship is that. The word is our sword, and then worship, it's like that secondary weapon that we use in battle. The word first, and then our worship. So yeah, we definitely need to hold fast to that.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
Well, that's good. I'm going to try to take my own advice this week.
Hey, I start my day in worship, driving to work.
Yeah.
My worship song on.
Yeah. Usually like that's what's on in my car most of the time. I do have a love
Unless
for
I'm
some
sitting
other
in
stuff,
silence.
but that's usually when I'm coming home, not when I'm going to work.
I'm
Do
the
you-
opposite. Silence about halfway to work, and then I'll put music on.
Oh no, I start my day with music for sure, and then when I'm coming home, if it's been a long day, that's when I need the silence.
Might need my Starbucks first.
Oh Lord. Okay, you got any final thoughts?
I don't. No, I just worship is important.
It
and
is.
If you're not using it in your daily life as a weapon, you definitely
Yeah.
try out some of those songs we suggested.
Yeah, for sure. They're real good
Elohim.
ones. Start with Elohim and then let us know next week what it did for you.
Really good.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Yep. Until next time.